Hello, we are continuing on with our conversations about anti-racism, and I'm really happy that we get to read the introduction to Sara Ahmed's Living a Feminist Life. So I wanted to discuss some of the highlights of that chapter, some of her most important arguments. In particular, I wanted to focus on how she defines a feminist life. So she starts off by saying that feminism is how we pick each other up and how we live. And she refers to, throughout the chapter, she refers to Audre Lorde and to Toni Morrison and to feminists of color, writers of color who have influenced her thinking as a feminist. She also talks in very inclusive ways about feminism. She thinks about the various feminisms that exist, including trans and queer feminisms. So Ahmed would be characterized as somebody who is trans and queer inclusive in her feminism. She's somebody who is really interested in how to bring more people into the conversation in order to transform the world to be more inclusive and more feminist. Also, I think it's really important that she takes a moment to discuss her aunties, right? What she calls her brown Muslim aunties, who are the ones who ultimately are the first ones to educate her about feminism. So she resists imperial narratives. I think the often narrated feminism that we get in the West is that feminism is a concept that travels from west to east, and she resists that. Also, and this ties back into our ongoing conversations about anti-racism, but she understands the ways in which sexism is connected to racism. And she talks a lot about how being a feminist is recognizing and speaking about that which has not ended. Racism has not ended. White patriarchy has not ended. These are ways of understanding feminism as intersectional, right? And she defines her feminism as one that that is ultimately intersectional in the ways that we were exposed to when we watched Kimberly Crenshaw's TED Talk. She also uses a really compelling analogy to feminism as a kind of homework or housework, right? This is something, feminism is something that we need to learn about. We need to be students, always coming to feminism and to new ways of learning as a kind of homework or housework means that we have to commit to being students. And also this analogy helps us to understand how to transform houses and how to transform communities. And again, this harkens back to Audre Lorde, right? The master's tools will not dismantle the master's house. Ahmed, likewise, is interested in using feminist tools to transform our communities, to transform homes, domesticity, our institutional landscapes, the university. Also important to Ahmed is learning how gender norms constrict us, right? And learning how to navigate the world according to the intelligible gender norms that are at our disposal. And so realizing how these norms are constructed will also enable us to navigate our worlds in new ways. I think Ahmed also makes a really important point of talking about feminism as a theory of the everyday. And I like her term sweaty concepts because it's about grappling with the everyday, the messiness of everyday life, of coming into contact with white patriarchy and dismantling it. This is ultimately about how we can change the world around us. And so therefore, it is a feminism that is close to the skin, as she calls it. It's a sweaty concept. So these are some of the highlights that stood out to me in Ahmed's introduction. I also really enjoyed the way she talked about her feminist killjoy kit, right? And she talks about the texts that have influenced her and how she cites and who she cites. I think these are all important ways of understanding how feminism operates as a kind of generational, intergenerational system. So to get to our discussion post then for this week, I want you to in your discussion post, discuss which of Ahmed's definitions of feminism and of living a feminist life resonated most with you and why. In your response, be sure to cite and provide analysis, right? So be sure to include the citation from the introduction. And I would also encourage you to feel free to make connections with Morrison's recitative, since we just read that. Or you can make connections with any current events that you see as being relevant. Don't forget to finish your post with a question for your classmates, and be sure to respond to at least one classmate. Okay, so that's it for this week. Be sure to get to James Baldwin's readings. We have Sunny's Blues.